This is the CreaseCast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CreaseCast. I'm your host, Lachlan Irvin. You know me. I've been here for quite some time. Cody's not here today, obviously. It's a Friday episode, but I do have a co-host today, and it is not Jacob or Angelina, who's usually here filling in. We got somebody way cooler. Joining us today from he is a co-host of Locked On Sharks. He is a graphic design extraordinaire, the master of promoting a YouTube channel, and he is a contributor over at San Jose Hockey Now. JD Young joins the show. Good friend of the show, JD. How's it going?
It's going. That is the greatest intro I've ever had. It's usually just one half of the Content Boys is the usual intro I get. So
that's
yes.
Right. I forgot to say Content Boys. That's very important. That's trademarked now, right?
It is. Yeah.
Fully trademarked.
We fully trademarked. If it's one thing, the Content Boys, we know how to brand and we know how to sell out. So
absolutely. If no one has checked out your show before in Vancouver, one thing I want to point out, I mentioned the YouTube promotions. You've done some pretty interesting. You've gone to pretty interesting lengths to get people to subscribe to your YouTube channel, and honestly, I've considered taking a page out of your book in that direction to get some more subscribers. So what did you do to get people to subscribe?
The first, I think it was like 200 subscribers. There's a picture of Tomas Hertl kind of dressing up like or not dressing. It's like a photo of him kind of doing his best Jaromir Jagr, where he's got the bleach blonde tips. He's got I think it's his now wife, but like she's wearing his jersey and like he's got no shirt on. He's like holding this pitchfork and stuff like that. So I got my wife to help me recreate this photo. And then when we hit 500 subscribers, I did the jumbo slide in my living room with the help of my kids, where Joe Thornton, he scores the series winner against the Kings and slides across the ice. I did that in my living room. Right now, the big one, though, is when we hit 1,000. Kyle, my co-host, we are going to recreate the Joe Thornton, Brent Burns, ESPN The Body magazine issue.
Yes. Incredible.
So yes, we are at 570 right now. So once we hit 1,000, because if you don't know YouTube, once you hit 1,000, that's where you become monetized and you start making money. So that's a big one for us. So
tell me about it.
Yes.
We're nowhere close. But and with that in mind, subscribe to the CreaseCast YouTube channel. But we're gonna have to start thinking of outside the box on that stuff too. The problem is at least in Canucks lore, there isn't really as many of those very particularly iconic
you could just do the Mark Messier. He's got his jersey at the podium. You're gonna lose subscribers.
On that one. I don't think
you could do the kissing while Vancouver burns down around you.
Oh my God. Oh, we just go call the Bay downtown. We're like, hey, can we just light a fire in the garbage can outside?
Down half the
what?
City,
Thanks. No, yeah, exactly. Like, hey, can we flip this car over?
It's for science. If you say it's for science, you can do it. So it's fine.
It's a social experiment, I think is what the YouTubers call it. Yeah, the one thing that I can think of that I don't think we could do without getting arrested is there is a photo from, I believe it's like a game in the early 80s or late 70s, right in the first bit of era where the Canucks were wearing the Flying V jerseys. And during a game against the Islanders, some streakers jumped over the glass, ran across the ice in front of both benches during a whistle, and then exited through one of the bench doors or something on another, at the end of the Pacific Coliseum. To this day, people are pretty darn sure it was staged. They were quick. Nobody seemed to no one caught them. They clearly got away out the other way.
Yeah, and I think nowadays, especially with the netting nowadays, it's like it's harder to to kind of get over the glass. And plus, I think climbing the glass while nude, there's too many opportunities to hurt yourself
Yeah.
there.
Literally all they and I think especially nowadays in particular, and back in those days, it would be so easy for you to do that and no one really fully know about it. Like
Yeah,
the
because
people in
it's
the
like
building will know. But
yeah,
like,
and they're now your phone's out because yeah, somebody's always recording something at all times. Like
oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's
There's no way you could do that today without getting recognized. Like you 100% are walking into your work the next day and getting fired because they'll
yeah.
immediately know it's you. Like I think that happened
Unless you
to
work for a
the
nudist
yeah.
company.
Exactly. Like, yeah, well, like there was the one the to try and to tie it back to Canucks Sharks, there was the one girl who flashed I think it would have been Ben Eager in the 2011 conference final. I think she got fired from her job like after she did that,
There
which
was
it's
when the Caps won the Stanley Cup in the
that's great.
in L or in Las Vegas. There's a picture of like Ovechkin with a girl flashing him behind, like right there at
Yeah,
the
you're like
glass.
see
It's
a
like
couple of players like, "Whoa."
it's
Like
Vegas though, so that's just common. Yeah, it's like
yeah, that's just par for the course there.
yeah.
That's a Tuesday. Yeah. And you know what else is really crazy is the game that happened yesterday, but for like kind of a weird way. It was both one of like the weirdest games of the season, but I don't know about you, but one of the more boring ones in my opinion. It was not good hockey.
No, it was definitely not good hockey, especially after watching because like on Wednesday you had Canes and Panthers, like two of the top teams in the East, and then you had the Avs and the Golden Knights, two of the top teams in the West. Then you had USA Canada women's hockey, so you just like
So good.
spoiled with this amazing hockey, and then it's like Sharks Canucks, baby, let's do this. Where it's just two teams who are I think already kind of looking towards next season. The Sharks have lost 5 straight games, and what was once the start of a promising season has quickly gone down the toilet. But yeah, I mean, with the Sharks, they 4 shots on goal in the first period, which is twice as good as they did against us in the second period against the Oilers on Monday, where they had 2 shots on goal on
Oh
the
my
second
god.
period on Monday. But yeah, it was. This is kind of like the Sharks' last stand. That's what we've been calling it, where it's like if you're going to do anything now, you have to do it now. And to come out that flat is so depressing for the Sharks. And I mean, credit to them. They found some energy and got back into the game. But yeah, not a good start.
Yeah, for Vancouver, like we were looking at this game as like, okay, if you want to prove you're a playoff hockey team, because the Canucks still firmly believe that they're in that category to a different extent than say under the previous regime. I think the last time you and I talked when we did when I came on your show, I think Jim Benning was still there, or at least like or had just been fired, like
Mhm.
freshly fired. And they were writing them, and they've been riding the Boudreaux boost, and like they're playing a lot better than they did, but the hole they dug themselves at the beginning of the season was so big that the talent discrepancy between them and like the best playoff teams is so obvious that there's not really any sense in trying to go for the playoffs. And the example everyone keeps giving in Vancouver is like, why would you go and just to get your ass kicked by the Avalanche in the first round of
Yep.
the playoffs? Like, what's the point? And like, the early going, they looked pretty good. They had a couple goals. One of the not the best goals necessarily in the world. Brock Besser
There were
had a pretty
some funky bounces on some of those goals. Poor James
funky.
Reimer. Yeah.
SAP Ice was interesting. Thatcher Demko had an off night. Like he looked as human as he can for a goaltender that's been as awesome as he has this year. But then like for everybody, like you watch the Sharks claw their way back in really quickly thanks to just terrible special teams the Canucks have right now. And then that late Barabanov goal. Like at the end of the day, like they won, but we were all kind of like, okay, they won. Let's never talk about this game again. This is
So we're going to talk
embarrassing.
about it now.
Yeah,
Let's
and we're
speak of
going to
the thing
talk
that's
about
never
it right now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because like, here's the thing: both these teams are better, more or less, than they let on. I don't know what where you feel the Sharks should be at this point, like, and where your expectations were going into the season. But I know for like the way the Canucks have been playing lately, we feel like they should be at least a little bit better than what they looked like in that game. And where are the Sharks at right now? Like, what are you looking forward to in terms of this team going forward here?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of go back, like going into the season, I thought they could be a potential playoff team, if everything kind of broke right. And a lot of stuff did break right for the Sharks, but they kind of also lost a lot of pieces along the way. And like going into the season, you think about, you had Evander Kane, who they were expecting to be a big part of the team, going, in the summertime and before Evander Kane decided to do Evander Kane things, but you're still expecting him to be a top 6 forward, on the team. And he was the leading scorer for the Sharks last year, and you were counting on that. Then you're expecting, Kevin LeBanc, who you're paying to be you're paying basically $5 million a year to be a top, top 6 at the worst and a way overqualified third line guy. He's playing on the fourth line and getting healthy scratch beef. And then he tore up his shoulder and he's been out. He'll be out till mid-March. And William Eklund, who, was a surprise and made the team out of camp, looked really good. And then the Sharks decided, let's send you back to Sweden. So there's 3 top 6 guys that you lose, throughout between injuries or other stuff, and some of the Sharks' own fault. And then, you expected, Erik Karlsson had a bounce back season, and we saw Erik Karlsson be kind of a dark horse Norris candidate for a good chunk of the season and then he gets hurt, and Brent Burns kind of slides off the cliff. And, like Timo Meier shows why, kind of finds this other level that we've been kind of hoping for since his rookie season, and shows why he's was worth a top 10 draft pick. And Tomas Hertl continues to produce well, and you can see all these pieces there, and everyone kind of clicks. Like you could, and the goaltending goes from the league's worst to average-ish. You could this team might be able to flirt for the playoffs, but like I said, you start pulling these Jenga pieces out, and they don't have the depth and the talent. You saw it last night. If it wasn't Timo Hertl and that Barabanov line doing something, it basically nothing else really happened with the Sharks. And that's just kind of been the story of the Sharks all season, where if it's not Timo Hertl and when Karlsson was healthy, if it wasn't these 3 guys kind of driving the bus, they just don't have the depth and the quality, of guys to be able to kind of compete night in, night out with other playoff caliber teams. And especially when you play these top end teams, they just don't have the horses for that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, the fourth line for San Jose.
That was the first good game from the fourth line in forever. Really.
Yeah, because I noticed that group pretty heavily. Lane Peterson was out there playing a pretty.
Hey, that's Lane Peterson on the second power play right now. That is how bad it's gotten for the. He is second PP right now.
Oh, I mean, look, we're in Vancouver. We're no strangers to a weird power play 2 unit, because boy, our special teams have been just awful this year. It's been a real mess and a half. But and it was very interesting for me as somebody who covered the Barracuda for that one year in 2018-19. Where Jeffrey Viel was coming in with after winning the Memorial Cup as a captain. He was clearly just there to be kind of the enforcer guy, but he still had some hands. Mm-hmm. Now he's playing 4th line minutes on the Sharks, and I'm good for that guy. He signed to an AHL contract, and now he's got a full NHL one. Good for him.
Yeah, he's kind of been a bit of a surprise, where you kind of expect him to be this enforcer, but he has a little bit of offensive skill, and it's in that fourth line, they've had so many, Port Gadovich, who's been he's been so close to scoring that first NHL goal, and I've liked his game so far this year, and I think he's been a really nice find for the Sharks. But again, these guys, it's nice stories, but at some point you gotta do something and the Canucks game was the first game where they actually did anything of substance in a long time. So
yeah, you clearly knew where I was going, because Gadjevich is obviously a point of contention for a lot of Canucks fans, because of how little they used him before they just let him go on waivers. There was and so as far as what he has brought, I mean, you kind of mentioned it there. He hasn't got the first goal yet. Is there anything you see there that makes him look like you think he could be a fit, a long-term fit in San Jose?
I mean, I think he's just kind of a placeholder right now. Like you do see stuff there, and I think he does have a lot of positives to his game. But he has 2 assists in 27 games, and I know his role isn't to score and stuff like that. But like at the same time, you would you think about like the Sharks prospects and stuff like. They have guys who are going to be coming and kind of competing for these roles here, and like the Sharks 2020 class. They're expecting a lot out of that class, and they have 5 guys already signed to ELC contracts. And when Bordelot will make the 5th when he signs his, but like they're all expecting these guys to make the NHL, and you don't really see that with with the draft class having potentially 5 guys from the same draft class actually potentially making the NHL. So like. As much as like Gadovich, it's like he's 27, and at some point you're going to have to either do something, or you have a bunch of guys that you've invested a lot of time and draft equity into that are going to be coming for your job here soon.
Right, because he's not their guy. Like as much as they picked him off waivers, he's
free. He's found money right now, so
exactly. They don't have. There's no loyalty necessarily. Like, oh, we have to make this fit because this was my draft pick or my big trade. No, it was just a waivers guy. Like he just happens. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. One guy who has worked out since leaving the Canucks to come to San Jose is Jonathan Dahlin. Jonathan Dahlin, God, like again, holds a special place in my heart, obviously. And we almost owe Jonathan Dahlin and the Sharks a huge thank you in Vancouver for how well he's played this year, partially because it came at the perfect point where the Canucks were clearly floundering, and you really felt like there was no way, like it seemed like there was no chance that Jim Benning was going to get removed from his spot as general manager. And then so for Dahlin to be going off, the guy he famously gave up on in 2 seconds for no reason, to go off and have just an amazing scoring run while the Canucks have like a fourth line group that could barely put the puck in the net and are scoring and are having just the worst run in ages. And like it all culminated. I think it definitely played a factor, in my opinion, into why we now have Jim Rutherford and why we have Patrick Alvin and Emily Castengay and Cami Granato. Like now we have and Rachel Dory. Like we have a great front office now, and that's kind of Jonathan Dahlin's doing. Is it entirely his doing? Maybe not, but it definitely played a small part. So in terms of how Dahlin's done, he's cooled off obviously a little bit.
Yeah.
But like clearly there's talent there.
Oh yeah. I mean, we go into the season, we're like, if he hits, like 15 goals, 20 goals, you're feeling really, really good about his rookie season. And he's already at 11 goals right now. And that's, like you said, he came out of the gates really hot, and he had dealt with a shoulder issue, and then he got COVID. And so he kind of cooled off a little bit, but he started to find his game a little bit here now. And yeah, Dahlin's been, he's been playing top 6 minutes basically since the jump. They've stapled him with Logan Couture, and, at the beginning of the season, it was Dahlin, Couture, and Meyer, and that was literally one of the best lines in the NHL. Like when you look at the advanced stats and all that fun stuff, like then Couture kind of cooled off, and Couture, COVID, same things that everybody's been going with. But like I really like the way he plays and like what he brings to the Sharks, and just that scoring touch, especially for a team that, again, outside of Hertl and Meyer, they really have a ton of guys who can put the puck in the net very often. And I think once going into next year, when Eklund comes, you start to get a little bit more reinforcements and stuff like, and finding that third line mate for Couture and Dahlin, you're really going to see this line kind of take off. But yeah, he's really fun to watch, and just, he probably could have like 5 more goals if it wasn't for like he's been robbed, like legitimately robbed like 5 times this year. So he could probably be closer to like 15, 16 right now if it wasn't for some bad luck.
Yeah, and good for him. Like that's one of the things, like in Vancouver, like he was especially like one of those cases where you really are rooting for the individual to like get his.
Linus Karlsson's having he's having a good season. He's got 18 goals, 18 goals in 38 games. And
look, we've written him off. Like I can't tell you how little I have thought about Linus Karlsson this year.
He's having a good year over there.
I think most people
33 points in 38 games in the SHL is not bad.
Good for him. I don't think he's coming to Vancouver anytime
He's never coming.
soon. Yeah, straight up. Like, again, we have completely written him off as even like a thing. Like, I don't think most prospects.
I'm really excited for him to come back to the Sharks in full Rudolph Balcers situation where the Sharks trade like that, because the Sharks traded Rudolph Balcers to the Sens and part of the Erik Karlsson deal, and then they waived him, and then the Sharks picked him up, and now he's been a top 6 producer for the Sharks.
Yeah, I don't know why they
bring back
awesome. I loved Rudolph Balcers like the few times I saw him play.
Yeah, I just like yelling Rudy on the podcast. That's why. So
yeah, exactly. You mentioned one guy at the beginning of earlier in the show that I did want to ask you about, obviously, like given recent stuff like Evander Kane. He was your leading scorer last year. Obviously, Canucks fans weren't necessarily paying as much attention last year, particularly last year. Like, it was very hard to keep track of anything that the other divisions were doing. Like, honestly, we were pretty much
like your own little bubble of like your 8 teams, and then that's
yeah, exactly. So. And it was all Canadian games, so it was like, oh, it's so hard to ever like pull yourself away from watch the other divisions. So we didn't get as much of an insight into things. But it's very well known what Evander Kane's deal is. He's now an Edmonton Oiler, which I find very funny.
Hilarious.
And yeah, like it's one of the funniest things in the world, because we're just like, I'm looking, because we're looking at it, we're like, God, the if there's one thing the Oilers needed, it's more drama. They definitely needed that. Now they're kind of making us eat our words a little bit, because they're actually doing okay suddenly. Yeah. Oh, now that they fired their coach. But what happened with that? What happened with Evander Kane? Because we really haven't fully gotten what went on there.
With the teal curtain from the Sharks, like they'd never let anything out. So you've been kind of having to put pieces together, and it's kind of he said, she said, and hearsay and stuff like that. So, but I won't go into the Kane situation. That's pretty well documented, and it's that's Evander Kane situation. So, but with the Sharks locker room stuff, it seemed like Kane was trying to skirt the rules some, like he wouldn't come, like wearing dress code or not show up to practice on time, and not just be like late where it's like, hey man, the line at Starbucks was long or something like that, but like late to practice. And, and again, when you're part of a team, like that's part of the expectation, right? Like, if I got to be here, like if everybody's got to be here, you got to be here too, type of thing. And, and then like during the playoffs, apparently when they were, playing in Vegas, he was gambling, which that's Kane's known to do that type of thing. And like, where he just seemed very kind of self-centered, especially like, hockey, it's very team, right? And I think among all the other sports, it's probably the most team, the major sports, but like,
yeah,
and it's just, and there was rumors where like, Hertl, who's probably the most beloved person ever. I've never met anybody who's like, oh, Tomas Hertl, I hate that guy. Like everybody likes Tomas Hertl. Like apparently the rumor is he went to Doug Wilson's office after the season and was like, you got to trade one of us. And like to that point. So can't be confirmed, but that's kind of the word. And like Hertl did an interview in Czechia before he came back, and it was kind of like, I don't know if the Sharks see me in the future type of thing. This is before the Kane suspension went down and stuff, but like you kind of got the rumbling, like the feeling that these two guys didn't like each other, and that was the Sharks kind of had to make a point. And I think with the Kane situation where he faked his COVID vaccine card, got suspended 21 games. He, goes through that. He gets sent to the Barracuda, and he, of course, he's like, I'm going to be a good guy and play. And he plays for like 4 or 5 games down there, and then kind of is like, I don't want to do this anymore. Gets COVID, and then he travels to Vancouver when he's not supposed to, type of thing. And that was the I think the straw where the Sharks were able to kind of terminate his contract. So that's still hanging up in the air, what the status is going to be. Shang Peng of San Jose Hockey now, he feels like there's going to be some sort of settlement with it. And so, but as of right now, the Sharks are clear of his $7 million for the next 3 years. But like, from the feeling of it is just like, this guy just wasn't didn't want to be part of a team. And this isn't the first time we've seen this, with Kane, where he just continually gets run out of town. And, he comes in and he's going to be a good soldier for, 6 months to a year. But then after a while, he kind of falls back to doing the Evander Kane thing. So.
Yeah, like it's not like with a lot of other guys who get like labeled as like a locker room cancer where it's always very vague and there's not really any like clear evidence to suggest that they actually are, and it's just kind of a thing. With Evander Kane, there's very clear and out there evidence that he is not the best teammate in the world. And I remember someone was very quick to point out, hey, Edmonton's arena is next to a casino.
I know.
Which is currently closed. Luckily, but like, you look at that and you're like, Jesus, that's a bad, like, that's a recipe for disaster. If that thing, like, if he doesn't get like the help, like the support system that he needs for that kind of stuff. Like, it's just it's a whole mess there. And, somebody, again, like I always say it all the time, as somebody who saw Evander Kane play as a rookie, or like not even a junior player in Vancouver when he was with the Vancouver Giants, like it's sad to see what he's become in that regard.
Yeah. Like if you talk about like on the ice, he's a very skilled
player.
Incredible player. He's, definitely is known to kind of take bad penalty, like even the bad penalty stuff, like he kind of worked on that with the Sharks, and like you kind of saw like, the first half of his career with the Sharks where he would take a lot of bad penalties, and then kind of the second half of his career, he kind of reined that in. And, like I said, he was the Sharks' best player on the team last year, scored the most points and stuff like that. And, on a very, very bad team, but like, yeah, man, it's just like, there's just so much off the ice stuff. And it's not just with his team, but like just everything he can, and there's no self-awareness. I think it is the best way, where it's just like, it's like, oh, I don't know, that must have been, I don't know where that came from and stuff. It's like, dude, this is the fourth time this has happened with you by now. So
this is that's the funniest thing about all of this is I remember when he got traded to San Jose in the first place, people were like, oh, if he doesn't knowing San Jose's locker room, and the way that it's structured and how much they like things done a certain way, and it's there, and they have that locker room kind of running at a certain clip, right? It's, if he doesn't work out there, it's not going to work out anywhere. And then of course, when he goes to Edmonton, people are like, maybe it'll work this time. Like, it's like the Arrested Development thing.
It hasn't worked for them, but maybe it'll work for us.
They delude themselves into thinking it will, but it might work for us. And then you see him like saying things like I'm paraphrasing here, but it was basically like a quote that was like, I don't know why those stupid jerks didn't those stupid jerks said nothing about me. They loved me. Like,
yeah. And it's like, you look at the Sharks locker room when he got there, it was, you had Joe Thornton and Joe Pavelski, and, like Marlowe, you had these, like these guys who've been there and done it, and they're not going to take that. And then it's like, Pavelski, they don't re-sign Pavelski because they re-signed Kane. That was the big thing, was like, that $7 million. Pavelski wanted a 3-year, $7 million contract, and Kane wanted a 7x7. And I mean, at the time, the Sharks, do I give a contract to a 35-year-old guy, or do I give a contract to a 27-year-old guy? Would make sense, right? But then what Pavelski's doing right now is ridiculous. But on a side note, but like, and then Joe Thornton, he leaves, and he goes to Toronto, and like, you start pulling again, you start just kind of pulling these Jenga pieces out, and that's, the Sharks team, they just aren't the same team that they were 3 years ago. And I mean, a lot of the same names are there, but they're just not the same players anymore.
Yeah, like, I mean, I was shocked watching that game, and this was something that I think it was Jason Bruff from Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver pointed out. Like, he was like, we're looking at the crowd and like the attendance of that game. It was shocking how empty it was in there. Now, I don't know. Now, I know I'm not going to give away your address or anything, but I know that you don't necessarily live like right in the heart, like in San Jose. You're like me. You did the commute. You do the commute to SAP, generally speaking. So maybe, I don't know how many games you've gotten out to, but like, clearly the attendance has really dropped off. Is that a COVID thing? Is that the product on the ice just not being good enough? Like, what happened in the last like year to kind of contribute to that?
I think it's both. Like, one, I mean, the Sharks just haven't been good, the past 2 years, right? Like, I mean, one of the worst teams in the league. They had the third pick in the draft that the Sens got 2 years ago, and then last year they had the seventh pick in the draft, and they're well on their way to another top 10 pick. I think they're 11th on Tankathon, so got to keep moving up that line.
Got to catch them all.
Got to catch, yeah. But and then Santa Clara County is also like the strictest. They've had the strictest, like COVID protocols and stuff. Even like as the rest of California has been kind of easing stuff. Like Santa Clara has been like since day one, like this is what's going to happen. And I mean, even going back to last year, the bubble season, like the Sharks had to start the season in Arizona because Santa Clara was just like, no, we're not letting anybody like play like type of stuff. So, it's such a long time ago, but like you had, they've just been super, super strict about it. And like I said, even though they're starting to ease stuff, but Santa Clara County's still being super, super strict about, their COVID protocols. And, like I've been to one game where I got to cover it in the press box this year, humble brag, but like, the same thing where, I mean, they were playing the Penguins, one of the best teams in the East, and like 12,000 people, and we've been to, I've been there where it's, every seat filled, standing, and super loud. And it's just, yeah, I think until the Sharks start kind of putting a winning product and, Santa Clara County starts to kind of ease some of the restrictions, I think you're going to see a pretty empty tank for a while right now.
It's like it makes sense on the surface just because of like, bad team equals not necessarily a product worth paying people want to pay for. But like, I think it's especially shocking just because like, I remember obviously when I was still living there, like it was still selling out every night pretty consistently, maybe not like 100%, but like clearly, like
it wasn't one of the
full.
Emptiest arenas in the league right now. Yeah.
No, definitely not. And it's shocking how quickly that it's emptied out there. And but at the same time, like I also like it must be interesting for the market, for the San Jose market in that sense, because like when was the last time the team was this kind of like clearly underwhelming, like mediocre team? Like generally they're always in the playoff
the 90s.
conversation. The 90s. Like it's been years since like that, basically the whole time they've been playing at that building.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
they've been consistently good. So,
yeah, I mean, basically since Patrick Marleau got there, I mean, his rookie years and stuff like that, they were kind of struggling. But ever since, and then the moment Thornton walked in, they've been a playoff team every year except for 1 year when Thornton was there. And it's just like, like I don't want to say that, I mean, I'm not going to say the fan base is spoiled because, they never got the cup that they deserve out of it. But like, and they have a right to, like try to want to see a good product. But at the same time, the Sharks really just haven't been through that rebuild. And I know Doug Wilson has been like, oh, we're going to retool. We'll be back in the playoffs here soon. But like, it's just going 15 years like that. It's just not natural really in sports with a salary cap where like, to be a consistent contender. And, like you made a lot of trades to try to win a cup. And I don't blame Doug Wilson for making those trades when you have the talent that you did to try to make a cup run. And, when you have Joe Pavelski and Joe Thornton and Logan Couture and Tomas Hertl and, guys, Brent Burns, and you owe it to those guys to try to put the them in a position to win a cup. And, unfortunately never happened, but like, you got to pay that price at some point, and the Sharks are paying that price right now. And it's going to be probably a pretty lean couple of years while they get through, some of these contracts. But, they've got Eklund coming, and I think William Eklund is going to be like legitimate superstar in this league. I could talk about Eklund all day long. I have talked about Eklund a lot. So like, I think he's going to be a legitimate, like, you see him like on billboards type of superstar. And, and there's the Sharks, they've got some young guys, but like you have to be good and get these young guys, you have to be bad for a while. And, that's just how it works.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we know all about here what happens when you try and take the quick fixes and and your quick fix involves Michael Del Zotto, Sam Gagner, what else? A Tyler Myers contract for way too long, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. There's a long list of quick fixes in there. And you mentioned earlier, you talked about Tomas Hertl, like kind of talking about how he might, like, this was obviously connecting to like the Kane stuff at the time, but like the how he not sure like he sees himself in the Sharks' plans going forward kind of thing. He is a UFA at the end of the season. Do you anticipate him re-signing, or do you think this is kind of like the farewell tour a little bit?
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing with Hertl right now is he is a UFA. He's arguably if they wanted to trade him right now, him and Claude Giroux are probably the two biggest names on the free agent market right now. So like if you wanted to get something right now is, now's the time's hot. So, with Hertl, it's the big thing is like, does he fit your timeline, right? So I was talking about earlier with Eklund, where you're going to have Eklund, you got this 2020 draft class, which you expect a lot of guys to be producers in the NHL. And he's 27, 28, coming off 2 reconstructed knee surgeries. You're going to give him an 8x8 contract is probably what he's going to demand. We've seen this with the Sharks before. You gave Brent Burns an 8x8 contract, and that contract is not looking great right now.
It's held up longer than I think.
It's held up longer than we thought. This is the year where
fair.
Brent Burns is finally like father time is coming.
Yeah,
Vlasic, you gave a 7x7 contract, and he got healthy scratch for the first time in his career, like this year. Like that
I honestly forgot he was still on the team. I thought maybe
he played 12 minutes against the. When was that? 12 minutes from Vlasic. Like
that's shocking. He was a World Cup of Hockey participant not that long ago.
Legitimately like the best defensive defenseman in the league for a long time.
But like he was totally in that. Like he was totally in that conversation all the time.
Yep. Couture, you gave an 8x8, and you're on year 3 of that, I think, right now, and it's like. You're starting to see that slippage from Couture where he's, he's not the same play driver that he used to, and he needs to be surrounded with that talent. Like you just kind of fall into the same trap again. And I think for the Sharks, if they really, really want to like be free and or not be free, but like kind of really do this thing right, I think the best plan is to trade him. If you can get a first and a high, you need to get an NHL caliber prospect and whatever draft pick. I don't care. Actually, I don't even care about the draft picks. I want the NHL caliber like the prospect who's either in the league right now or getting ready to, who's going to be in the NHL next year that you can pair with Eklund type of guy. And and then you've got him, whatever you can get from him. You've got Timo, who's 25, so he can still be part of your next kind of core. And then you kind of go from there. And, like I said, and that $8 million that you would potentially spend on Hertl, you could do a lot with that in the offseason, where it's like if you want to maybe try to retool your third line, or maybe go out and try to find a young guy, or whatever. But I love Tomas Hertl is my favorite Shark right now. Like he's one of my top 4 all-time favorite Sharks. But it's you just keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, and I just don't see it happening with this time.
Yeah, it's the if you love someone, let them go.
Let them go.
Bit.
Yeah,
a little bit there. I want to and where do you envision Hertl going? Like if you're making the sales pitch to somebody of why they should have Hertl, and who is that team or those teams that you're looking at that potentially you think would be the most interested and willing to give up the right package for him?
So the teams, I mean, if you're looking at Colorado, right, who's been really, really good for a really, really long time, but they haven't, been able to get to that second round. And Hertl's a legitimate 1C who I was tweeting about this earlier, where it's outside of San Jose, I don't think he gets the respect because he plays in a small market and stuff like that. If you played for, Colorado or, pick your team or whatever like that, but he would be much well, but his stats, he doesn't have the scoring stats of some of the other guys because he plays on a really bad team where him and Timo have to do all the work on the team. But his analytics and his, evolving hockey's numbers, they're better than Nathan McKinnon's are this year. They're better than Gabriel Landeskog's this year. You're getting a legitimate 1C who's performed in the playoffs. And, we've seen especially, you think back to the game 6 versus Vegas where the double OT shorthanded goal to win it and send it back to San Jose for the famous game 7. He's performed and had huge moments in the playoffs, and, not just those huge moments, but he's also been a consistent performer in the playoffs. And I think, if you look at those teams that want to add that final piece, Hertl could be that final piece that brings you a cup. And like, it's not very often that you're getting legitimate 1C talent at, if the Sharks keep, if they easily will pay, hold on to half his salary to sweeten the deal. But you're getting a guy for $2.5 million, $3 million to come be a 1C for your team. And if you're like the Avs and you have Landeskog and McKinnon, you throw him as your 2C. That's the best 2C in the league. Like,
and then you have Nazem Kadri, who's just scoring at the most ridiculous
rate. You throw him
life.
on your third line C, like your third, or if you want to put Hertl on the wing, like it just gives you so much flexibility. And the price tag of actual salary is not going to cost you that much. But yeah, it's going to. The Sharks should ask for the world when they if they trade him, and they should expect to get the world back when they trade him, because he's that type of player. He's a special player.
Do you think that they can, I guess the $1 million question is here in that case is like, if it's Colorado, do you think that they can make a better pitch, a sales pitch for Tomas Hertl than say the Flyers could make for Claude Giroux? Because that's kind of the big name that's out there right now, is that Giroux is like, wants to go to Colorado.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's like, it's going to be the asking price too. Cause it's like, Claude Giroux is, he's a little bit older and stuff like that. And I don't, you don't know what he's going to get. And it's like, I don't know if a team's going to want to try to re-sign Hertl, and like, the Avalanche, I don't think they would be able to like to re-sign Hertl in the offseason. Their cap's going to get ugly here fast. But like, it's, and the other thing with the Avalanche that we were only talking about, they don't have their first and second round picks this year. Like they don't have their 2022 picks. So it's like, they have to trade real assets. And, teams are just like, oh yeah, we'll trade whatever. It's like, teams aren't going to take your trash for like your star players. Like that just doesn't how it works unless you're the Sens, like where you'll just trade whatever. But like,
or the Canucks, who've helped out the Tampa Bay Lightning on numerous occasions. Yeah, sure.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But yeah, like, and I mean, like, it almost feels like Alex Newhook is basically like, well, you're going to be playing somewhere else by March. Like,
that's the thing is like, if you get back like Alex Newhook, then you've got something to talk. Because then it's like I was saying before, you pair Newhook with Eklund, and then whatever top 10 pick you're getting in this draft, and it's like, okay, now you got something that you're starting to build here, and like, as much as I love Hertl, I don't see Hertl being part of that next core of guys. And if that $8 million, if you don't spend it this year, 2 or 3 years down the road, that $8 million could be really useful to do something else with, especially when you're going to have to pay Eklund or pay, Timo Meier is going to need a new contract here and after next year. And if Timo Meier is going to continue to perform at a top 10 pace, he's going to deserve all the money that he gets. So yeah, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, like, and that it's actually interesting that you mentioned Timo Meier, because honestly, like, I've been looking at Timo Meier, and just because of where the Sharks are at, I'm kind of like, I wondered if they might be in a situation with Timo Meier where the Canucks kind of are, in a sense, with JT Miller right now, where they've got 2 years left on his contract. They're already looking to move him because they know just how much he could command on the open market. Like the Toffoli thing really threw some extra money into the conversation here. The Rangers are already sending Larry Brooks out to downplay how much they're willing to pay for him, and being like, we'll only give you Philip Cheadle. That's the only fair deal. It's like, oh, this guy that has less than 20 points for our best goal scorer, our best point getter, top 15 in the league. Yeah, sure. Let's totally do that. Right. Like the Rangers clearly want him, but they're trying their hardest not to give away the farm, even though they probably will, when push comes to shove. But other teams are obviously going to be interested in that too. With Timo, obviously he's a lot younger than JT Miller, but not by a whole lot. Like Miller is pretty close to 30. He's 29, I believe, right now. Timo's 25, so he's still got lots of good years ahead of him. Yeah. But do you envision a situation where they maybe look at where the Sharks are at this current moment, just based on how the depth pool that they've got and the number of blue chip prospects that they have, and say maybe it's worth it for us to explore trading Timo because of how high his value would be and getting a huge return for him from someone?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this on our podcast too, where it's like, yeah, you could ask for the world, I mean, you could legitimately ask for, I want 2 first-round picks or whatever your top best prospect type of thing for Timo, and and if they don't offer anything, you just hang up the phone and go to the next team. But like at the same time, I still feel like with him, where he's 25, he's still young enough where like he's just kind of entering his prime now, where if you give him that, whatever, 8-year contract, like by the end of it, you're not going to have as many of those bad years that you hope for, right? Where it's, by the end of it. So if you give him the 8-year deal, he'll be 26. So what, that's 34, right? If I do my math right. So
I think, yeah, around there. Yeah. Like 34.
Yeah. So won't be the same player, but you're not like,
you've gotten the full, you have used the entire peak of his career for sure by that point.
Yeah. And then it's not like, oh, I still have 3 more years I got to pay this guy type of thing when he's kind of getting out of his peak. So, and then too, I mean, the other thing too is like you still need guys who know what they're doing, right? Like, to kind of help with these young guys, and like, as much as like Logan Couture will still be there and stuff like that, but like he's gonna be on the the back nine of it. He's already on the back nine of his career and going to be, by the time the Sharks are good again, he's probably going to be like your third line center. And it's like you want to still have guys in there, so not all these young guys are just having to try to like learn on the fly. And it's kind of like the Sens right now, where it's just like, okay, we're just going to play all the young guys and kind of see what happens there. You still need some adults in the room at times, and I think I think Timo Meier could kind of be that adult in the room, at least when it comes to like being a good a really good player for the Sharks for a while. So I mean, but if someone's willing to offer everything, you got to sit there and think about it really hard for a team that's trying to kind of rebuild. And then, I wouldn't hang up is what I would say. So,
yeah, I think, the Sharks are clearly in a spot where like, there's no one on that group that necessarily, I don't know, like in terms of like the current roster, like if you had an untouchable, I don't know necessarily who that would be. If there's anyone, there might be no one. Like in the Canucks,
Banoff if he's going to score with.
Clearly. I mean, clearly. Like I mean that goal. Thatcher Demko again is having a Vezina Hart Trophy caliber season right now, in my opinion. That was probably his not. That was not his night.
That one won't be on the highlight package.
I literally said at the night, like earlier, I'm like, look, when you've made as many great 5-alarm saves as he has, like you're entitled to a couple softies. Like he's clearly earned it in this game. But like, if Banoff's there, for sure. Like, but like with the Canucks, there's like the clear 3, which is Demko, it's Pettersson, and it's Hughes. Like those,
like those guys. Anybody calls a trade for that, you just hang up and laugh because But like, I mean, Eklund is the only guy, but he's, like I say, he's not even on the Sharks right now. But like anybody, like guys who are actually like on the roster right now, there's nobody where I would hang up the phone, because Timo would be the closest one. Just because, like I said, you'd have to offer everything for Timo. And even then I think you would have to think really long and hard about it. But other than that, I mean, I think, and the thing that sucks at the Sharks is they just have so many guys with like no move or, like 3-team trade clause like that. So it's just tough to move some of these guys. But other than Timo, I think everybody else is fair game.
Yeah. I mean, goaltending for sure, they could use a little bit of an upgrade. They're doing okay. Like Aiden Hill's been, I guess, okay for them.
He's been I think he's been a disappointment this year, especially with when you trade a 2nd-round pick for him and you kind of hope. I know he's young, he's 24 and he still has room to grow, but like you kind of were hoping that he would like kind of take the reins and be like, show the signs of your goaltender of the future. He's been hurt, and it's, and when he's been in there, he's, we joke he's got the slowest hands in the West because like that glove hand is just not there. But so he's been a little bit of a disappointment. James Reimer has been outstanding this year, and I will say no bad things about James Reimer.
Oh no, James Reimer is famously one of the nicest people in the world. You can't knock James Reimer, but like in terms of like the future for the Sharks in net, do they have that guy already, or are they still kind of in the market for him?
They drafted this year this kid Ben Gaudreau. He plays for the Sarnia Sting, and we interviewed him. Another humble brag here, but he had like. So last year, the OHL, they famously lost their entire season. So he slipped to the 3rd round because of that. But I mean, he was after Wallstedt. A lot of scouts actually had him as kind of the second goalie going into this draft process. And if he had played in the OHL last year, he would have shown it. But yeah, he's been amazing this year. I think he's got 2 shutouts this year, and he's had multiple like 45 save games on a pretty mediocre Sarnia team. And he's been the OHL Star of the Week and stuff like that. And he's, again, how it is with young goalies where it does take them a while, but I think in a few years, he's going to be a name that you're going to start to hear more about. So he already has Goat Row, which is, it's already right there. We've already started the marketing brand on him. So yeah, he's
you
right
guys
there.
have the marketing thing for sure down pat when it comes to those players. We need to work on that on our show. We have the infinity blocker, but that's about
Mario
it.
Ferraro, because that's all he does is block shots for
the infinity. There you go. Yeah. So like the infinity blocker for us is like it's our like player of the game award, like the infinity gauntlet. So we give it out every game. God, if we're going on the blocker side specifically, like blocker specific, that's clearly Tyler Mott, aka Connor Bedard's favorite player. That is canon. That's very canon that Tyler Mott is his favorite player, which is why he's going to come to the Canucks. He's going to force his way to Vancouver. Yeah. Hey, crazier things have happened. We've never gotten a first overall pick. Maybe that's the way we get them.
Sharks never got the first overall pick. So, I think we are due for that. Oh man, Connor Bedard and Eklund would be a hot fire.
I'm just going to say, considering how few lotteries you guys have had to be involved in, I think we deserve it more than you for how many times we've had to watch and sit there and watch Trevor Linden look real sad when they drop from when they have the second best odds at first and drop all the way to 5th and end up with Uli Levy, which slightly a self-inflicted burn there, but still just one of those, we have had the most rotten luck in the world when it comes to those darn draft lotteries, and it's all Edmonton's fault. And with that in mind, looking at the Pacific Division right now, obviously our teams are a little bit more on the outside.
Oh, they stink.
They stink. They very stinky. The Canucks they're better than they were last night. I promise. They're at least slightly better. Honestly, there's still part of me that looks at them they could totally luck their way. They could totally trip ass backwards into a playoff spot.
I just don't see it now with so you have the Flames, who are basically a lock now, especially after making, they're very good.
There are 2 locks there. It's Vegas and it's Calgary. Now they have Tyler Toffoli because they want to recreate the 2020 Canucks in any way, shape, or form.
Whenever you can recreate the 2020 Canucks, you just got to do it.
Yeah, you just got to do it. But then also they're throwing in some even older Canucks in there, like Eric and Branson and Brad Richardson. They've got the whole gang there. With Calgary, I've said before, I am very not sold on Calgary at all. But clearly they're a very good hockey team, and they're playing the best hockey they can. Jacob Markstrom's been unbelievable, and I'm very happy for Jacob. But he worked hard to get there. I wanted to ask you about Vegas specifically, because they're obviously a team that the Sharks have had many battles with over the years. They're notoriously, I guess, would you call them the bigger rival that as of just in the current day, are they a bigger rival for the Sharks than the Kings, or is it still just
the
LA
most
can't take that throw?
I personally think recently, because since the Kings kind of stopped being good, and that was kind of their biggest rival. I mean, but now the Sharks, the Knights, it's not a rivalry because the Knights just beat them constantly. They went 8-0 against the Sharks last year. It's not much of a rivalry right now, but but I think though we'll start to see that Kings Sharks one here renewed as kind of, because the Kings are gonna be really good here really soon.
Hopefully it's good. It's a good rivalry.
It is a good rivalry. I think it's best. I think when all 3 of the California teams are fun, it kind of makes hockey more fun again, having to play go through this. But the Sharks are kind of clearly that step behind, because you can see it with the Kings and the Ducks, where they have these young guys Zegras and Byfield and something their core is starting to kind of come to fruition, and those teams are gonna be battling it out here soon. But the Sharks are a couple. But back to the Knights though, where it's they're I love that they're pulling out the Tampa Bay's, LTIR playbook right now.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh man, we got Eichel back, but Mark Stone,
Oh no, Mark Stone
Mark
is
Stone's hurt.
mysteriously
Yeah, he'll be
disappeared.
no timetable, but April 30th sounds about right. Yeah, somewhere
Yeah.
around there.
Oh, we had to move your playoff games by a week. Oh,
Ooh, setback,
I'm feeling a
setback.
little hurt. Oh no,
Yeah.
there's definitely some a little bit of shenaniganery going on there. I mean, but like, hey, they're within
It
their rights to do so.
Yeah,
Like,
and I think they've gotten to the point, and that's the thing with the Knights is like they haven't even been healthy this year, and that they've had a pretty good season. So just imagine like when they Voltron this team together and actually have everyone healthy to like, that hopefully we get blessed with the Avs Knights series, because that's going to be just a war right there. But yeah, I mean they're the way that they've kind of pieced this season together with so many injuries and stuff like that. Like you got to kind of give it, as much as I hate to say that, you got to kind of give it to them just for kind of hanging in there right now. And as they start to kind of get guys back and start to figure it out before the playoffs, and yeah, they're going to be not a fun team to face in the playoffs.
yeah, I mean, if they put it all together, like with Vegas, I'll say this, like I felt like I haven't watched as many of their games this year, but like the couple times I've seen them, they've looked a little disjointed, and probably a lot of that's due to the injuries and stuff. But I do wonder when they, like you said, like when they kind of Frankenstein it all together in the playoffs, like I wonder if they've got like the full team chemistry to make it work a little bit. The goaltending is a bit of a question as well, because Leonard hasn't been as good as I think they were hoping for him to be,
Yeah.
and now he's injured too. So they're having to try and figure that out again. Like that's the one thing with the Knights and the Avalanche that I find really
They've had
interesting.
36 people play for them. I just pulled up their
Oh
hockey
my,
reference.
Ben
36.
Hutton is one of those.
Yeah, they've had a lot of guys play for them this year, and
I don't.
yeah, I mean
Yeah,
but I mean they do have a lot of veteran guys, and some of those mainstay guys are gonna be like they know what they're doing and stuff like that. So I'm not worried about them when they get to the playoffs. But yeah.
now you are familiar with their coach. You are familiar with
Pete DeBoer.
with the ever fascinating Pete DeBoer, who Mr. excuses himself. Look, it's really funny. Like I didn't know a whole lot about Pete DeBoer as a coaching until I worked with you guys at Fear the Fin for a while there. Now I know a lot about his coaching style, and of course, after watching them play during the Canucks night series in the bubble, I will never forget him being like, oh, like talking all about how Demko completely destroyed them. I'm like, you're not supposed to say that out loud, Pete. You're not supposed to tell people that. But thank you anyway. And the way the Knights were going, like there were just multiple points there. I was like, oh, they're kind of vulnerable. Like there's a little bit, there's a kink in the armor there.
Yep.
That you can maybe work your way through, because the Canucks totally in that later part of that series completely gave them rattled them, and then we set them up nicely for Dallas to just come in for the kill, right? With them, I wonder with Pete DeBoer coaching wise, I just look at what do you think he's capable of getting? Is there enough talent on the roster that it doesn't matter, or do you think that with his coaching style that there's gonna be a little bit of a learning curve there once they get in?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of because DeBoer was with the Sharks when for their Stanley Cup run, and then also there with the 18-19 Sharks team that went to the Western Conference final, and that 18-19 team was loaded with guys, type of thing, and and you kind of felt at times that they were winning despite Pete DeBoer and some of his coaching decisions. I will still, why was Melker Karlsson getting playing time on that team? I still
I'll never forget that.
Why are you benching Donskoy to play Melker Karlsson?
That was the weirdest decision ever. And I remember that team. I remember being fortunate enough to help you guys cover that team that whole year, and being oh, they just never had. They were supposed to be the Cup favorite at one point, and it was they never had that moment where they're oh, it's totally clicked. They are clearly going for it. There was always that something was not firing. Something in the circuit wasn't firing, and we
Gotta play Michael Haley. He's got to play 5 minutes a game.
Oh my
Gotta
God.
Melker Carlson's got to get out there. But if it's not injuries for the Knights, it's going to be Pete DeBoer and his. I don't want to say conservator. I don't know. It's just Pete DeBoer's
His
coaching
love
style.
for like the
The
depth, the random
grinder.
depth guy who
Yeah.
plays 7 minutes and only goes out, blocks one shot, and that's it. That's
And then
his whole
gets into
stat line for the
gets into a
day.
fight. He's a good locker room guy though, so
Is
that's the
that
most
is that
important
Will
thing.
Carrier or is that Nicholas Waugh? I have no idea who that would be on this group.
Yeah, I don't know who would be on for them right now, but it's just
It's a hodgepodge.
I guess it'd be Kolsar. He's got 41 pims and
Oh my
16
God.
16
Yeah,
points.
Keegan Coleslaw. Every time
Or
I read that, I
McNabb.
see Keegan
Anyway.
Coleslaw. But yeah,
Yeah. He's if the Knights, if it's not injuries, it's Pete DeBoer's coaching style is probably going to be that's going to do them in. So
yeah, they're an interesting mix there. The Canucks play Anaheim tomorrow, and they've fallen off a little bit.
Sharks have not even played the Ducks yet this year, or the Knights actually.
Really?
Yeah, they play them next week. Yeah,
That's so weird. So the Canucks didn't play Calgary for the first time until 2 weeks ago, I believe. Whereas we played Edmonton like 3 times. We've played Nashville like twice. Like we played some weird teams already, like finished our season against them. But yeah, for some reason, yeah, we're only just now getting into playing Calgary and then like Anaheim and stuff. Like and maybe that was kind of a good thing because we played the Ducks once. The Canucks played the Ducks once, I believe. Or no, twice. There have been twice. And in a way, they've kind of avoided the worst of the Ducks at their best, which is like when they had Trevor Zegras just doing wild shit. Like I've never seen anything like it.
The
Like,
goal
oh
he
my
had the
God,
other night where he just like flings it up and
it's unbelievable. It's fantastic. I love it. It's
That's my thing to like when Sharks fans like, oh, we shouldn't tank. Why should you tank? I just point to Zegers. Like that's what you're gonna have to face for the next 10 years.
yes.
And like, what's your answer to that? At least like you guys, you have Hughes, you have Pedersen, like you have like at least you have an answer, but it's like you gotta find somebody who can do the same stuff as him, because if not, it's gonna be a long 10 years.
And even with Hughes, we just happened we were fortunate enough that the Coyotes wanted Brett Howden and the who was it? I think it would have been the Canadians wanting, was it the Canadians wanting Kotkaniemi, or was that that would have been Kotkaniemi's year. So Hughes just happened to fall to the Canucks to a certain extent, and you could see one of Jim Benning's funnier moments. He actually, like, one of the few moments he was actually kind of endearing was when he was like basically running to the podium before they find out they made a mistake.
Are we sure this is right?
No.
Are you guys sure
Hughes
that's
isn't actually left on the board, right?
That was Eklund for the Sharks last year, where it was like, because that was our thing. We were like, okay, like if you want to save the franchise, pick Eklund, and it's like, okay, like you gotta hope that the Ducks kind of make a man pick, and like McTavish is probably gonna be a fine player,
Oh
whatever.
yeah, I mean he played in the Olympics, guys. That guy looked pretty good.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, you gotta hope, like, it's like, okay, the Devils are gonna probably pick the other Hughes because you gotta try to get as many Hughes brothers as you can. And it's like, okay, you gotta hope Columbus picks somebody dumb. Okay, cool, you're gonna pick Ken Johnson. Yeah, it's like, okay, Ken Johnson is probably most people had him like going to Vancouver at 9 before the Canucks trade that picks, and it's like, okay, Red Wings, Stevie, you don't want him. I know you love picking Swedish people. It's like, they picked Edvinsson, and it's just like, okay, like finally, but yeah. It's all luck anyway.
It's all luck. The Red Wings are the one team where like they could pick somebody completely off the board and I'll be like,
and it'll work out for
probably
them.
the right call. Yeah, like I trust them I fully trust Steve Yzerman. Like when I was at the draft in Vancouver when he drafted, I think that was the Moritz Seider draft, and everyone's like, who? Like nobody knew.
Yeah, now look at him.
Like, now look at him, right? And I remember at the time though, I was like, if Steve Yzerman thinks he's good, he's probably really, really good.
Yeah, I think Simon Edvinsson's gonna be a really good player, but I just really like Eklund. I think Eklund's gonna be. I spent many hours talking about how much I love Eklund. So
that is me with that's me with a little bit with Podkolzin to an extent. I mean, I'm not the draft expert, but like with Demko, with Demko, that's been me for like all the years that it took him some time to get going. I was like, guys, trust me, he's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Give him the opportunity. He's going to run with it. And he just needs some time. Be patient with him. And sure enough, now he's now like I'm firmly like on the
your faces.
yeah, like I'm running the like the victory lap. Him and Markstrom. I made a long-term bet. I've made long-term bets on the goaltenders and have been rewarded every single time because it's the one thing I know.
All right, I'm gonna send you some Gaudreau tape and see what you think on this guy.
I'll tell you what I can see there.
Okay.
Because especially now Demko like straight up looking like a Vezina candidate at least, or he might win. He might win this year. He's been that good. I'm firmly even in the market of like he's got a shot at the Hart if they make the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, he wins the Hart, frankly.
Because like, they're the reason that he's going to the playoffs.
No way they make it without him playing like standing on his absolute head the entire time, and he's been doing that routinely. But with Anaheim, like they have John Gibson in net. Like they're clearly set. They've got Zegras. They've got weirdly like that team is. There have been moments where it's like they're weirdly like putting it together for a team that kind of feels like they should still be.
Yeah, there's like a year or two away. Yeah,
like I was going into the year expecting like, well, they're going to be a non-factor. They're going to be fine. You're going to get some good games out of the young guys, but they're doing okay. They've been on a bit of a slide of late. But like, do you see Anaheim kind of being able to kind of squeeze their way back into that conversation with Edmonton and LA?
I mean, I right now I'd give it to the slight edge to Edmonton. I know their goaltending is non-existent, but when you have Connor McDavid and Draisaitl and Evander Kane, as much as we talk about, he's a terrible person, but he can score the puck and he's pretty good at hockey. I give it to them just because like with the Kings and the Ducks, it's like we like their guys, but you still have to go through that like grind of trying to make the playoffs and stuff like that, and it just doesn't come right away. It's for some it's kind of a process. And I kind of like go into the season, we thought like the Kings and Ducks would actually swap, where like the Kings would be kind of that team where maybe like knocking on the playoffs, and then and the Ducks would kind of be still a year away. But like I still, it's good for them to get this experience of like trying to making a playoff run and stuff, but like I don't know if, like I said, when you've got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl every night, it's tough to ask. That's a lot to ask. So
you cannot. You can't. As much as you like feel like you're like deep down, you probably should count the Oilers out. Like you can't, because they've got Connor. Like when you have McDavid and Draisaitl, like you're going to be in the playoff conversation every single time.
It's like if a team like the Sharks are like, hey, you want James Reimer? Like that's way better than what you got right now. And
I mean, we have Spencer Martin to offer. I don't know if you've heard, but he's been incredible. He was incredible in the couple games that he played. I went to one of his games and I was watching him play, and I was like, there were so many times where I'm like, I was sitting there like a hockey parent, like, oh my god, like I just wanted him to not get like roasted. And sure enough, he's out there just kicking ass. Like I'm like, oh my god, I'm so proud of you, dude. Like
that's Godchenko, as we call him, Godchenko. Zachary Sawchenko, he's had to come in for some spot minutes here and there, and it's just like, he came in. The Sharks were like getting like it was like 6-1 after the first period against the Penguins, and Reimer got pulled, and Sawchenko came in and played, and he let up one goal the rest of the game. He was amazing, just stoning but
we're at that point with Halak as well. Well, like Halak has played, like that's the thing. Halak has gotten a lot of like. He's gotten a rough go. Like he's got a bit of a rough ride in Vancouver since he's been here, just simply because they've happened to lose quite a few games. He had the last game he played, he was not good. Like he clearly had a bad period against the, I'm trying to think back to who this game was against actually, but it was, I'm blanking on it right now, but he had a bad game, got pulled. Demko came in, played cleanup, and did find the rest of the way. The Islanders. It was the Islanders. He had led in 5 in that first period. But other than that, he had been pretty darn good in most of the games. He had just been having the rough luck of either playing in the first half of the season with the Travis Green, Jim Benning team that was awful, and just cursing him at every turn. And then the Boudreau team, where he's actually done pretty well and got a few wins here and there. Like for us, we're looking at them like, God, you got to move Halak. You got to trade him because there are a lot of teams desperate for a goaltender right now. Like even like Colorado, like as good as Darcy Kemper is, he's such a
But yeah,
like
it's
an
like
injury risk. Like
how
you're
many
just
times has
waiting.
Darcy Kemper made it through an entire season? It's
Yeah, I love Darcy
he's
Kemper
really
for
good when he's
like
healthy, but yeah, that's
incredible when he's healthy. Like probably the most underrated goaltender in the league when he's healthy. The problem is that he's often not healthy. Like,
yeah.
and you're just looking at that like, oh, Colorado, hey, how'd you like how'd you like to give us Alex Newhook for Yarrow Halak, this shiny Yarrow Halak?
That
He's
dirty new
20.
hook, you don't need
Yeah, he is
it.
just like he is exactly the same as that 2010 Halak. Like
Yes.
nothing has changed about him. You bring him in, you will win a cup.
Yep.
No doubt about it. And definitely ignore that he's owed like 1.25 million if he plays one more start. Just don't worry about that. You'll be too busy shining your cup ring. Like
Yep.
that's where we're at with him, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then with LA, like I don't know how like with the Kings. Yeah, like you mentioned the Kings a little bit. They've been so good. Like they've been surprisingly good this year. They've fallen
Except
a
for when
little.
they play the Sharks and Timo Meyer scores 5 goals
That's
against them.
that's right. We were all like, "Oh, okay, this is a good question for you," because I remember at the time when I was living there, Safeway was a sponsor, and they were doing $1 million score and win, or like $100,000 score
Mhm.
and win. Which I don't know if you know, but like in Canada, that's been a staple of Canadian broadcasts for years, and we've only had it happen once, and everybody in Canada freaked out when it finally happened. I think it was Kyle Connor scored 5 goals for the Jets,
Mhm.
and that finally won somebody the $1 million. Did that happen this year? Did somebody win $1 million because of Timo Meyer?
I don't know if they did that. They did bring back the 4 in the net. Instead of pizza you get, it's tacos you get from Taco Bell. So Timo Meyer did provide tacos. Single-handedly provided tacos for people
Not
that
nice.
game. But yeah, I don't know about the safe. I do remember the Safeway thing. I don't know if anybody won the $1 million or whatever off of it. So this year, yeah.
Yeah. Famously in Canada, like they've been running that promotion. I want to say like since the early 2000s, like 2000, maybe even like right into like 01, 02. Like they've been
Mhm.
running that promotion, at least in Vancouver anyway. That's been a thing. Now it's like it's done by Save on Foods, but it used to be Safeway as well. And God, for years we were waiting for somebody
Just
to
that
win
one.
that damn thing. Never has. To this day, no one has won it. At least not with a Canucks game. No one's won it. Somebody won it with the Jets, and that's the only one in Canada. But everybody's like, "Oh my God! Finally, somebody actually that
That
money's real."
person's royalty now.
Yeah,
Just
that
legit.
person is like just world like they're on Letterman. They're going
Yeah.
or I guess what now it's Colbert. They're going. God,
Whenever
am I old? Am I old?
Whenever any like Canadian parades or whatever, like the Canadian Thanksgiving parade, they get their own float. They're the $1 million winner.
It's that obscure like local celebrity that you just like you know a bit, but you'd
Yeah.
never like you only know like one thing
It's-
about them.
yeah, they're like a legend. Yeah.
You
They're
know
an
them
urban
eventually.
legend.
Yeah, in a way they almost become famous for just showing up at events kind of thing. Like that's their whole gimmick. It's
Ribbon
like
cuttings and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like a new hardware store opens up and it's like, oh my God, it's the guy who
$1 million.
Kyle Connor won $1 million for. Like that's like their whole bit, like their whole shtick. That'd be incredible.
I would happily take that job as yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, me too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then last thing I guess we'll talk about here is Seattle. Seattle, obviously it's been a rough year for the Kraken to
Except for when
start
they
off.
play the Sharks, because they're
Or
2-0.
they win.
They're
They're
2-0
2 and
against the
0.
Sharks. Yes.
Yeah, I think I remember one of those. Like in a way, I'm kind of like, thank God. Like I want them to win a few games. I feel a little bad.
I
Like,
just didn't want them to be the Knights again, where they just come out
oh
and just like burn down the league. I'm just like, I'm
yeah,
done. I'm
yeah.
done with hockey.
I don't know about I don't know about you and what your thoughts are, but like a lot of people, at least in like Canuck circles, as soon as like the expansion draft happened, were like, oh, so they're not going to be Vegas because of how many choices they made. I don't know who they were necessarily projected to take from the Sharks. I think it might have always been Alex True.
No, it was gonna be who was it? There was like
Or
Shimmick.
True.
Like
Oh, and
Shimmick
they
was out there. There was who else was it? It's so long
was it
ago.
Donato? Was it Donato?
Donato could have been, yeah. And they ended up signing him. But yeah, they took Alex True, who's also been on the podcast. Another humble brag. But yeah, it was, like even some people were like, oh yeah, they're making the playoffs. Like, how are they gonna score goals? They just like
Like Yanni Gourde's injured for like 2 months. Like, oh God. And I mean, to be fair to the Kraken to a certain extent, like I think they'd be doing a lot better had Philip Grubauer not just self-destructed. Like there's so many games where they lost by like 1 goal where it
Yeah.
was just like, oh, and then you're like, gee, what happened? And then you look, oh,
The
Philip
Martin Jones
Grubauer has an
effect.
800 save percentage. Oh no. Like, yeah, and you're looking at their goaltending long term and how they've fully committed to both him and Chris Drieger. And you're like, oh, you could have had Capo Kakinen, you could have had Vitek Vanacek. In fact, you did, and then
Did have
traded
he?
him
Yeah.
back.
Yep.
Like, I don't know what you're doing here. It's like it's really gone south for them. But like, I mean, hey, they've got Matt Beniers who looked okay in the
Yeah.
Olympics.
Matt
Like,
Beniers. I really liked Matt Beniers going into the draft. So he was number one on my board, even ahead of Eklund, just because of playing a center position and stuff. And yeah, and this year he's really kind of on that Michigan team has really kind of shown why he's being worthy of, you know, being that number 2 pick and stuff. So yeah, he'll be on the Kraken next year, and he's gonna be very, very good. So
yeah, and they're gonna get another high pick this year. I mean, they're like it's Arizona, it's Seattle, it's poor Montreal.
poor Montreal.
I mean, on one hand, I feel bad for them. On the other hand, I kind of don't. Like okay, here's the thing. I feel bad for the players. I totally feel bad for the players, and it's totally not their fault that they're stuck in this really bad situation where they have it's clear that Carey Price
is really good at hockey. Yeah.
Carey Price was literally just a bottle of super glue holding that whole team together. And then when he's not there, all of a sudden they're really not good. Like not surprising. It's not really that surprising. You kind of saw that coming a mile away, but then you look at the things that like Mark Bergevin was doing on his way out, like drafting a certain player, doing a lot of other being involved with the Chicago Blackhawks thing. Like, God, you're like, oh, well, you kind of deserve what you got coming to you. Like a little bit of karma for you there. I mean, the kid and but I feel bad for their goaltenders more than anything. I'm like, I'm so sorry. You're not.
I felt bad for Cole Caulfield. He was just like, it's like, oh, let's play Cole Caulfield on the 4th line and stuff like that. And it's like, be small, as our friends over at Locked On Canadians say, be small, score goals. That's all you got to do. And now that Martin St. Louis got there, he's scored 4 goals in 4 games. It's just wow.
What you mean to tell me Dominic Ducharme that was a bad coach? What a shock. Like, okay, literally, I will never be like, I don't consider myself like a good expert on necessarily analyzing coaches very well. Like, I think I'm very, very, very like, I have very borderline, like starting pack kind of things with that. Like Travis Green I thought was a pretty darn good coach. He did some good stuff, but as soon as like Bruce Boudreau comes in, you're like, oh, this is clearly there's a clear difference here. Like as again, I still think Travis Green is like could be a good NHL coach for another team. It was just weird what he was doing by the end of his run, and you're kind of then you see the breath of fresh air with Boudreau, and you're like, wow, he really
that's what good coach he looks like.
Yeah, you're like, oh, he really wasn't doing that good a job. Jeez, I've been saying this guy should have stayed for a bit. With Ducharme, like I never seen a more obvious sign of, oh my God, this team is better when you're not around. When they played that conference final against the Knights and Luke Richardson and our beloved Alex Burrows was running the bench, and you're like, oh my God, they're playing way better. They're like, hey, maybe scratching your young guys like Romanoff and Kotkaniemi and those guys, maybe that was a huge mistake. Just saying. And then sure enough, they're terrible this year. Like for a long stretches, like when they fired him, I'm like, God, like he was clearly holding that team back. Like it's been rough for them. I feel kind of bad, like for sure.
Yeah, it's just such a like we made the cup finals to oh my God, we're the worst team in the NHL in like a 3-month span.
We are worse than the team that is actively trying to tank and is about to go play in a college stadium. Like that's where we're at now. Whoops, and we're paying the most money to do so. It's been a bad year. Actually, oh yeah. So I had 2 last questions. One thing kind of pertaining to that. There's been a lot of talk with like the salary cap. We kind of touched upon it with the Knights. There's been like obviously questions about like how the salary cap is structured and why it's kind of stupid the way that it's run. I mean, here in Vancouver, we have the obvious example of the NHL actively punishing the Canucks for signing Roberto Luongo to a totally legal contract when it was signed,
Yeah.
and being like, okay, we're going to take money away from you
Yeah, the
after he
recapture thing.
retires.
Yeah.
But then also the Knights are totally allowed to go put Mark Stone on LTIR for the rest of the year. And so the Lightning can do the same for Nikita Kucherov, right? It's one of those totally why are you giving these guys room to do whatever they want, but the Canucks oh, you're going to get dinged for a totally legal contract. Really the whole thing comes down to the idea of the flat cap, and why the flat cap is kind of it feels in a way it's more of a more of an obstruction rather than an actual aid for even for the small market teams.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do. So I don't know. Are you in favor of the idea? What would you say about the idea of going to more what the NBA does and going with the luxury tax style soft cap?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be, because you run into the problem where it's how many times where it's you're punished for building a good team. It's especially
right.
you spend so much time drafting and developing these guys, and then when they finally get their paychecks, and I believe I'm very much in the pay players what they're worth.
Yes,
especially when you look at NHL players compared to baseball and football, and they don't get paid anywhere near what some of these other guys are paying, getting paid. And it's but it sucks where it's you I was talking about with the Sharks team, where it's they had to make a decision between Pavelski and Kane, and and they couldn't keep Nyquist and stuff like that. And it's if you're a team trying to make the cup, if you don't care about your salary cap, you want to have your good players and stuff like that. And it's and I get the well, what about the small market teams and that they can't afford that? And it's well, sorry.
You're getting shared revenue as
you're getting money from them. Yeah.
You should want the extra money we bring in. And at the end of the day, the real thing with a hard cap is that in actuality, it just helps people the owners not have to pay as much. It actively makes it harder for players to get their value. The running joke on our show with all the bad contracts the Canucks have, thanks to the previous regime, is always we always say we're never going to knock a player for getting too much money. It's not their job to say no to the money that they're offered.
Yeah.
It is totally within their rights to do so, and they should. Tyler Myers, go secure the bag. Good for you.
Erik
Same
Karlsson,
with all of Ekman Larson.
You enjoy that Karlsson. You enjoy every bit of that $11.5 million a year. I love you, Erik Karlsson. You enjoy every bit of that. But yeah, it's
that's been an interesting one. We didn't even have time to get into that today because he's not playing right now anyway.
Yeah. Hey, he just had a baby boy, so
good for him. That is true. He had another kid, which is awesome.
Yes.
The soft cap, it makes it really hard for players or a hard cap makes it really hard for players to get their worth. Not every team can be a Tampa Bay Lightning or a
and not every team should be a Tampa Bay Lightning. That's that's how natural it is. You're gonna have really good teams. You're gonna have middle mediocre teams, and then you're gonna have bad teams. And if you're a really good team. And like you said with the Lightning, it's they're kind of going through a loophole, and the Vegas is going through a loophole right now. Wouldn't it be great if they just didn't have to go through that loophole? And it's you could still have the same team or type of thing. And if you really want to load up and be if your owner's hey, you know what, I'm going to spend $1 bajillion, and guess what, the other team's going to get part of that money too anyway. And like you said, it's going to keep from players from it's and does Tomas Hertl, $7 million, which sounds like a lot in hockey terms, but compared to other sports, that's a a middle reliever in baseball.
I was one of the things that most shocked me recently was I think it was I think there was during the off season, John Morant, who's a member of the Memphis Grizzlies, formerly the Vancouver Grizzlies. He got signed to what was it, a base salary of $12 million at 23. So he's making more, and he's a very good basketball player. I don't know a lot about basketball, but he's
one of your next star type. If you're not into basketball, he's going to be multiple all-stars, potential MVP type of guy. He's very, very good. Yeah.
But as of right now, he's still kind of in the second tier or third tier kind of thing. but he's making more money than Connor McDavid is every single year, which is not like makes sense. They make more money at the NBA, but in hockey, like that's a travesty. You should be looking at that and being like, almost like with shame, where you're like, our best players are getting paid way less than anything that
So,
these other leagues
my
have.
favorite is, so in the 1999-2000, Jaromir Jagr was the highest paid NHL player at $10.3 million.
Yeah.
So we've gone up $2 million in the past 20 years. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing, NHL?
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, yeah, like, and I'll never forget, like, looking back on the Luongo contract in particular, obviously with all the hard like things, I'm like, oh man, how much, like, I was thinking about it not that long ago. I'm like, how much was he paid? It was like $6 million. So like, Jesus Christ, this is the greatest steal of a contract in the history of time. Literally, you had a future Hall of Famer playing for you for less than double digits. Like, that's incredible.
You know what Joe Thornton's highest contract in a year was?
It's got to be like the one with Toronto, isn't it? Like, wasn't it something like relatively recently? No. Okay. What was it?
1 year he made $8 million. That was
$8 million for a guy who won league
Thornton.
MVP. Like, Jesus.
Joe Thornton, who's the 101st best player in the NHL history.
Did he not get into the NHL 100? There were so many guys that was like a crime. Who did they pick? They picked someone that was really stupid. Like, I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, it was like Duncan Keith or something.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Let's see, the 2017. He signed a contract a 1-year contract in 2017 for $8 million. But yeah, it's before that. It was like 6.75, 7 million, 7.2 million, 6 and 2/3. Like, yeah, highest amount Joe Thornton ever made in a year was
wild.
$8 million.
That's wild.
Joe Thornton.
Wild. Yeah, and looking back on that NHL 100 thing, like, God, like, knowing what we know now about the Blackhawks, I'm like, okay, I can erase 3 of you and put Thornton, Iginla, and Malkin there easy. Like, those are the 3 who got snubbed clearly the most out of that group.
Thornton, who's, might actually pass Marlowe's all-time game. I think he's like 80 games behind Marlowe's all-time game played.
Oh my God, is he really? Is he really that close? Holy cow!
He's really that close, and he lost, multiple. He lost seasons to injury.
He lost lost a full lockout year. I mean, they both did. Like, they both lost a full lockout year.
Just casually top. I think was he like 6 in assists or something like that. Or it's insane. But
yeah, now he might go finally win his cup with Florida, which would be
how fun would that be? Joe Thornton,
that would be very fun.
Florida man winning a cup.
I have he totally, that would be like his Instagram caption if he won, would be like, Florida man wins cup. Like, that's totally what it would be. I have my Luongo Panthers jersey now, and then there was rumors, I think, that they were interested in Claude Giroux as well, which would be like, oh my God, let's go. Give Florida. I would love to see Florida be routinely good and win playoff games. Like, that would be awesome. All right, and then the last thing before I let you go, it's been a great episode. Just looking for, I think the Canucks and the Sharks, I believe we only play maybe like twice more this year. Like, if we haven't played yet in Vancouver. There hasn't been the game in Vancouver yet.
Nope.
I think the Canucks and Sharks are geared up to play at least one, obviously once more. I think maybe there's a second in there as I stall for time. No, it is just the one, that might be an originally scheduled game and they haven't put the new one in yet, because that one says April 9th. I think that was an existing game. So there might be 2 more in there. Based on where we're getting to at the season right now, the Canucks are currently sitting about, it looks like, if I'm doing the quick math in my head, 3 points ahead of the Sharks. The Sharks have 2 games in hand. Based on where these 2 teams are going, which team do you envision at the end of the season as being the finishing ahead of the other in points?
Easily the Canucks.
It's no doubt in your mind.
No doubt in my mind. The Sharks are, like I said earlier, they've lost too many pieces, and then if they trade Hertl this season, it's over. That's the nail in the coffin. So yeah, I'm honestly, I'm fine with that. I want these Sharks to get that nice juicy draft pick and yes. Go #find Eklund a friend. So
that's great. That's exactly. Yeah. The Canucks, I mean, the Canucks are maybe in a spot where they can have their cake and eat it too. Like they're clearly in a spot where they should be looking to pull up the floorboards and give every NHL player, like just about any player they can away in a trade if it's going to get them draft picks and stuff, or just ready and retooled for next season. Because frankly, I think the Canucks could be a really good hockey team next year if they do everything correctly. Right now, it's clearly they're not there. But yeah, I think I would also put the Canucks in that category just because they have a few more game breakers that are going to be here for the long-term future. I mean, like there's no comparable to Thatcher Demko. Thatcher Demko can take the worst team in the world and make them somewhat competitive. And that's just what he's been this year. JD, it has been awesome having you. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this and joining me for this. We'll have to have you on again when the Canucks and the Sharks meet up next. But until that time, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at myfryhole. You can follow the Locked On Sharks account at Locked On Sharks, where we shitpost 87% of the time and manifest 13% of the time. You also, if you're check us out, our podcast, wherever you get podcasts, we're also on YouTube. Even if you're not Canucks fans, we do a lot of draft stuff. Like we're really heavy into the draft stuff. So like what we do is we pick a player, kind of, first round guys, and we get, some of the hockey Twitter experts like, Will Scouch and Tony Ferrari and a bunch of these guys, and they come on and they profile and they kind of, talk about why these guys. So if you're wanting to get into the draft and kind of, I figure the Sharks and the Canucks are probably picking pretty close to each other. So a lot of these guys might be interested in you. So yeah, go check us out. We're probably going to try to do 30 or everybody in the first round or every potential first round guy in our quest to find Eklund a friend. So make sure you guys go and check us out there.
I can attest to that because you guys do great draft work and stuff like that. And the Canucks, there's no trading. No, we're not trading any first round picks this year for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Thankfully,
that was a dumb trade.
It was okay. Look, Connor Garland has been really good. So it's so hard for it's one of those. It's literally the meme of Larry David where he's doing the curb your enthusiasm. Like that is 100% where we are with that.
But you could have had Tyler Boucher before the Sens.
We totally could have had him. We totally could have had Tyler Boucher. But we totally could have had. But we've got the angry little elf, Connor Garland, who is absolutely so fun to watch and just an absolute firecracker when he's on the ice. I love the guy. I don't think anyone can help but love him. He's become such a fan favorite here. As for myself and my regular co-host Cody obviously is not here. He actually picked up his new puppy today, which you guys should go check out on his Twitter at Cody Sievertson. You can go see little Murph Mellow Sievertson himself, the golden retriever. Lovely little puppy. He also does Abbotsford Canucks work over on ahlnucksharvest.com. He'd be telling you to go check out his game recaps and everything if you were here. He just recently did the whole thing on with Jack. Obviously, Jack Rathbone took a really bad hit in a recent game. Brutal. Colton Sevier, who I did not know was not in the NHL right now. Apparently, 2-game suspension. That seems a little light for what that was. Luckily, apparently Rathbone has got discharged from the hospital
that's good to hear.
I was it was one of those things where I looked at it and I was kind of there's a slim possibility that it looks a lot worse than it is. Hope to God, and it kind of seems like it was, but God, that was
when he just kind of fell to his knees and kind of wobbled for a second, you're just oh God, that's bad.
You're looking at that dear God, this man might not play again for the rest of the year. Thank God that's not the
ever
case.
Type of thing.
Or ever, or ever
that
easily that can become a Mark Savard scenario if you're not careful. He's very lucky. We're very lucky that he ended up for himself, just in his own personal health, that he got up and he's doing seemingly okay, and he's supposed to travel with the team for their next game.
He's traveling. Oh my God.
Yeah, apparently, supposedly, it was one of those. He might, but he might not. But he still might. Just that window. It's oh my God.
He's day-to-day upper body injury.
How is the man is clearly he might be superhuman. You've got to bring him up to the Canucks before someone else takes a bad run at him. As for myself, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lock in the Crease. You can also find my writing work over at CanucksArmy.com. I write there pretty frequently. And check out our Patreon if you enjoyed the show. $1 and $5 tiers. I do the Pacific Division power rankings. Goofy little fun look at the division every single week. And in the $5 tier, we also are on Twitch at twitch.tv/CreaseCast. I did a gold medal watch along stream the other day. That was very fun. Go Canada, go. Next year, you'll get us in 4 years, maybe. No. And
we all know that World Juniors is the superior of the Olympic.
You keep dreaming.
World Juniors better than the Olympics. We all know this. So
that is the. I mean, some people unfortunately will agree with you in Canada, but like those people are wrong. Marie-Philippe Poulin is the greatest, might be the greatest clutch player of any gender of all time. I think that might be an open and shut case. She's incredible. Go subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel, full YouTube episodes. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I don't know, maybe I'll do something. Maybe I'll do the Tomas Hertl picture too. I don't know. We'll do something else. I'll figure something else.
You'll be hearing from our lawyers.
I will be consulting with you directly on what to do. I will be active.
I already told you need to do the Mark Messier press conference.
I have one of those. I'm sure I can find one of those jerseys somewhere. That actually might be pretty funny. I will shave my head.
Yes,
I will grab my Lay's potato chips.
You got to put on some pounds. You got to way overweight, out of shape.
Gotta really work on my resting angry face.
Yep.
With that in mind, guys, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll be back on Monday. Bye, everybody.